For centuries, Catholics have portrayed themselves as the bringers of peace and protection from evil.
The power of Christ compels you!
But, as with most things, the truth is usually wildly different. Far from protection from evil, the Vatican plays more of a political role. And their history with Nazi Germany proves they are far from saviors. Has the Vatican truly redeemed themselves for the role that they played with Nazi Germany? And how are they politically influencing Israel today? To answer these questions, we first need to shed light on CIA documents that exposes the Vatican's role in smuggling lost Nazi gold. During the Holocaust, there was a puppet government established by the Nazis in Croatia called the Ustasha. The Ustasha regularly stole cash, gold, and valuables from Jews and Serbs before deporting them to concentration camps. The Nazis looted an estimated $5.6 billion in today's currency from central banks and individuals, much of which was later recovered by Allied forces. However, an estimated 10% remains unrecovered. After the war, the search for lost Nazi gold would eventually reveal the Vatican's role with this Ustasha regime after a Freedom of Information request made in 1997. With this Freedom of Information request, a report written by Emerson Bigelow on October 21, 1946, known as the Bigelow Report, was declassified and released to the public. Emerson Bigelow was an intelligence officer for the War Department's Strategic Service Unit, which is an interim spy organization having existed between the end of the Office of Strategic Services and the creation of the CIA. Details in the report include how a Catholic priest by the name of Father Kronislav Draganovic, who was the Ustasha representative to the Vatican and would aid this puppet regime in helping war criminals escape. And the reason this priest was able to pull it off is because he used his Vatican bank connections to launder gold stolen by the Ustashi. But this guy was not just the Ustasha representative to the Vatican. He would end up becoming a major Western intelligence source inside the Vatican. He eventually admits in 1945 that 400 kilos of Ustasha gold, worth millions of dollars, had been hidden in Austria, and he personally had moved 40 kilos to Rome concealed in 2 packing crates. So while many want to deny the Vatican's role in the Holocaust, there's a mountain of evidence. Additionally, a book detailing the Vatican's role called The Unholy Trinity by Mark Aaron and John Loftus lists all the government sources and goes on to say, but this 400 kilos of gold was just a tiny part of the Vatican's role in hiding and moving Nazi plunder. 18 months after the Bigelow Report, U.S. Army intelligence confirmed the existence of a Vatican-Swiss bank connection. They reported that 2,400 kilos of gold and other valuables worth around $90 million in 2016 gold prices still remained in the Vatican's secret accounts in Switzerland. Ultimately, the Bigelow Report claims 200 million Swiss francs said to have come from the gold and valuables stolen from the victims of the Holocaust by the Ustasha Nazi regime made its way to a Vatican bank created in 1942. However, when sued by Holocaust survivors in 1999 after this information came out, for the gold taken from them and fellow victims, the Vatican denied having the Nazi gold and had already destroyed all their ledgers. The Vatican claims that for the first 70 years of the bank's existence, it simply had a policy to destroy all bank records every 10 years. And as the Catholic outlet American Jesuit Review says, if cash and gold had been deposited by the church insiders acting on behalf of the Ustashi, there would be no record. Aside from destroying bank records, Catholic law, officially known as Canan Law, specifically number 489, section 2, states, each year documents of criminal cases and matters of morals in which the accused parties have died or 10 years have elapsed, even those documents are to be destroyed. Only a brief summary of what occurred will be retained. So just as the Vatican destroyed its bank records every 10 years, they also destroyed criminal records every 10 years, leaving no detailed evidence of all the atrocities they committed during any point in time, especially during World War II. And just like the Vatican allegedly helped launder gold and valuables stolen from Jews during the Holocaust, they may house one of the world's most extensive and priceless collections of arts, historical artifacts, and religious relics. The very same type of relics Hitler tried to loot himself. But speaking of treasures, let's look at the Vatican's vault for just a moment and expose how this relates to Zionism and stolen Nazi gold. Let's look at the temple treasures. Formerly known to be housed within the Vatican's museums and apostolic archive, are collections in a secure storage in a Catholic quote-unquote bunker. Pope John Paul II, known in some circles as the Bunker Pope, inaugurated the carefully guarded bunker in 1980. 7 years later, he would then go on to give a speech on September 11th, 1987, recognizing Israel's right to exist. Pope John Paul II states, and I quote, "After the tragic extermination of the Shoah, the Jewish people began a new period in their history. They have a right to a homeland, as does any civil nation, according to international law." Still, it would take Pope John Paul II until 1993 for the Vatican to recognize Israel as a nation. But this recognition came with carefully planned strategic negotiations in writing that rings of political ambitions and one-sided religious narratives exclusively in favor of the Catholic Church. This document required by the Vatican in order to recognize Israel is called the Fundamental Agreement between the Holy See and the State of Israel. In this agreement, in Article 3, Section 3, it becomes clear that while Israel was expected to keep non-religious international law, Israel was also expected to recognize and help uphold Catholic Canan Law, which is religious law exclusive to Catholics, no differently than how Sharia law is exclusive to Muslims. Additionally, while Catholics got the contractual agreement to their canon law in writing, they were also able to justify their hypocrisy in having theological entitlements, even though they reject Zionism for theological reasons. When the Vatican's Bunker Pope stated in 1987 that for the Jewish people who live in the state of Israel and to preserve in that land such precious testimonies to their history and their faith, we must ask for the desired security and the due tranquility that is the prerogative of every nation and condition of life and of progress for every society. In this statement, he effectively reduced Judaism down as something sentimental when he says Jews have a right to the preservation of testimonies, not the practice of them, but to merely preserve them. When we understand these statements for what they are, it becomes very clear that by concluding that every society has the right, the Pope thought he was able to resolve the Vatican's own hypocrisy, since Catholicism denies the land of Israel's right to exist theologically. That's right, folks. Catholics actually reject Zionism. In 2018, Pope Benedict XVI published an essay on Judaism and Israel where he said the following: "After the establishment of Israel as a country in 1948, a theological doctrine emerged that eventually enabled the political recognition of the State of Israel by the Vatican. At its core is the conviction that a strictly theological understood state, a Jewish faith state, Glaubensstaat, that would view itself as the theological and political fulfillment of the promises is unthinkable within history according to Christian faith and contrary to the Christian understanding of the promises." So when you see people like Carrie Bowler on the Religious Liberty Commission for the United States say Catholics don't believe in Zionism.
Well, as you know, I'm a Catholic, and Catholics do not embrace Zionism, just so you know. So are all Catholics anti-Semites, according to you?
She's simply choosing to accept the views of a Nazi-collaborating Vatican. So while the Catholic Church rejects the Jewish people's right to Israel theologically and will only embrace a form of secular Zionism. The hypocrisy against the Holy See still glares deeply towards them for the religious recognition the Holy See demands in Israel, leaving them nothing more than Nazi regime collaborating hypocrites. With that said, one thing both Pope Benedict XVI and Pope John Paul II did when addressing Zionism is mention the Holocaust, the very same Holocaust they laundered money in. And just like the Vatican destroyed all evidence of any remaining Nazi plunder and denies any wrongdoing, to this day the official Vatican position is that it neither confirms nor denies possession of Herodian temple objects such as the Golden Menorah, sacred tables, altars, priestly garments, and the like. Perhaps just like the Vatican denies having any of the Nazi gold, maybe the Vatican's bunker that was inaugurated by the same Pope who waited almost 50 years to acknowledge Israel as a secular nation is truly holding those sacred temple objects that do not belong to the Vatican but belong solely to the nation of Israel. Just as they tried to deny Holocaust survivors the remaining gold that they plundered, that they stole and laundered during the Holocaust, they are still denying the Jewish people their right to their sacred temple items. In addition to denying God's people, Israel, of their gold and their temple items, they refuse to acknowledge them as a legitimate religion. Because if they did see them as a legitimate religion, they would not have a theological problem with having a religious Jewish state, but they do. That makes the Vatican not just the Unholy Trinity, as the title of the book, the very book that details their Nazi war crimes, but it makes them the Unholy Trinity of Zion.